Okay, so a lot of people have been asking how I do weight painting. I'm just going to give you a few quick tips as fast as possible in a quick short video. So for this example I'm using Rigify. I've got the meta rig set up and the bone placement in. Just one thing before we generate the rig here, because there's some people asking about hands as well. They're having problems with hands, so I'm just going to show you very quickly how I set up the hand. So I'm just going to go into edit mode here and we'll turn wireframe on. So here, as you can see, if we look at the top view here, the fingers are as straight as I possibly can get them. This helps me curl them in a much more straightforward way without any complications into a fist. And if you notice, the first bone in the fingers is usually about the same length as the two smaller bones combined together, and it's the same for all of them. And as you're getting these bone placements in, you want to make sure you're getting this nice curve so that the middle one sticks out more and there's a nice arc coming through on all of the joints at each knuckle. That's really important to have. And also one other thing that I do to get a nice fist is to turn on the axes here under the viewport display, and I roll them in a little bit on the sides. You can see it's not quite in line. If you look here, it's not quite in line with this edge loop here. I've curled it in slightly this way, anti-clockwise, so that when it curls it comes in to more of the center of the palm instead of going straight to about here. So you want to get it to about here, and the middle finger here, and ring, and the fingertip of the little finger here. And to do that, you just press Control R and you roll it together and you get to the angle that you like, and then you select everything else in the chain, press Shift N, and then set the roll to the active bone, which is this one here you've just edited. Okay, and I always test the fist before I generate the rig with Rigify. So to do that, you can go into pose mode before you generate the rig, and you can try experimenting with a nice trying to get a nice pleasing fist deformation here, pose here, to see if the bones are positioned well and that the knuckles are all in line. And if you look at the front here, you can see you've got this arc as well happening nicely here, and the bones are curling in the right direction. And so that's a good thing to try, little tip before you generate the rig, because it's just more work later on when you realize that the fingers are not placed correctly. Same again, you want to try and do the same with the jaw and the face. You can try posing that before you generate the rig. Right, so that's one little thing there. Alright, so I'm going to generate the rig now. Alright, now I can hide the meta rig. And we can keep it there for later. You can delete it if you're happy. I'm going to keep it there just for now, in case I need to make changes later on. First thing I'm going to do is set the bones in front, and I'm going to hide, if we come over here, we've got the, so I'm going to do this demonstration with the face, so I'm just going to hide all of the other layers, and I'll show you with, let's say, the mouth, because that's a quite complicated area. And I'm going to turn on the deformation bones, which is the 1, 2, 3, the third layer from the right on the bottom layer of the bone layers. okay, under the Running Man properties, or armature properties. And so here you've got the bones, and for weight painting this shape is not ideal. If you look here, they tend to get in the way a little bit. If you just turn off X-ray, yeah. I think it's off already. Alright, so there we go. So that's that. There we go. We turn off X-ray. There we are. That's a little bit better. So we've turned that off, and we've also put the bones in front here. This is important, and we're going to change the display as we can change them to stick. Yeah, stick or wire, both will do there. I like to have stick, and then I can see the difference between edge loops and the bones. You can turn off the axes now. So that's your first thing. Change your bone shape. Second one here, as we go, we're just going to assign the automatic weights first. So we're going to click on the mesh and shift click on the rig, Control P, with automatic weights, and that will give us a good base to start weight painting. Okay, now we need to select the rig and the head mesh and go into weight paint mode, and as you can see immediately, this makes it very difficult to see what weights are where. It's very dark and difficult to see. So the first thing I like to do is I go to the viewport shading here, it's the white circle, and then I set the lighting to flat, and then a single material, and I change the single material to pure white. Alright, another little thing that I like to do with this is to go into the preferences, and there's a few things to change here to make your life easier. First of all, I like to set position 1 here. This is under editing. This will be collapsed by default. You open up the weight paint and you can click on custom colors and change the colors here. So I like to make sure that the position 1 is a pure white color, and then I like to put another marker here at 0.999, if you can see that, and I change this to pure red. And I do the same at the other side here. For the 0 position here, I put a marker and I make it a very dark blue, and then I put another one just next to it, and you can type in the position here. I like to put in 0.001 with a pure blue color. This way I can tell the difference between completely 0 and completely 1, which helps eliminate all of the weights from certain areas, so that I can have more control on which bones affect which vertices. That's another little thing there. And then an add-on which I absolutely love and kind of have learnt to rely on now is called the Paint Palettes add-on. If you type paints in the search bar under the add-ons and click on Paint Palettes, and you'll find that here in the end panel, and it has a collection of presets for weight here, which brings us to the next point here is when I'm setting up the tool. If we go to the tool settings now, this is for the brush or any of the tools here. The brush mainly, we're going to use the brush mainly, and the blur. So here I want to change the blend from mix, which is the default, to value, which is here. There we go. And that means it just paints the value. Alright, it's no mixing, no adding, no subtracting, nothing. It just paints the value which means I can paint a value of 1 or paint a value of 0 by changing the weight, which we can do quite easily here by selecting these here, and it'll automatically set the weight there. These are also customizable by changing them up here, which is incredibly useful. So that's it. Another thing in the tool, going back to the tools here, I like to make sure that the Vertex Group X is switched on if my model is symmetrical, which this one is. It's perfectly symmetrical, everything except the head. The hair is not symmetrical, but everything else is symmetrical. We hope. There's some asymmetry here in the jumper as well, so we'll worry about that when we get to it, but for now, if the model is symmetrical, like the head is perfectly symmetrical, then this is going to work fine. Okay, so that on there and not this one. This will not be on by default, so you turn this off and you put on Vertex Group X, because you know, if we paint this bone here, we don't want this bone affecting the other side as well. No, what we want is this bone having an influence here and this bone having an influence here symmetrically, and this is what this does. It's not this one, it's this one here, which could be confusing. Another thing is auto normalize. This is really important, so that we can keep values between 0 and 1, and I'll just show you quickly that there. If I'm going to, a little tip is to pause your model, and you can select bones in weight paint mode by pressing Control and left click, and I'm going to rotate this out, and if I paint, for example, we're going to Control click on this bottom bone here, you can see the weights here. If I go to the paint palette and press 1 here, I can paint completely 1 on these vertices here, for example, and here and here. Notice it's going completely white. It's useful for me to see with the settings we set there, and this will remove all the weights. If this is 1, no other weights can occupy these vertices value, because it's taken up by this bone's influence at a value of 1. And if we go into edit mode and select, you can see that that has removed all the other weights except for that particular bone's weight there. And so that's really useful, because we can know exactly which bones are influencing which vertices here. You can see that's correct there. That's exactly what we want for now. And the reason I'm removing all the other groups is so I can start again with this and just start painting in the vertices exactly where I want them to be, and add exactly the bones I want to influence these areas, instead of having, say, this bone affect this vertex and this bone affect this vertex, and etc. I just want this bone and this bone to affect or have any influence over this vertex here. And by painting ink 1 with auto normalize on, under the tool tab, under the tool settings, I can remove all the other weights that way and just start again with it. So that's what we want to do right now, and everything I want to be affected by this bone, I'm going to paint them in here. So we're going to just do this one particular bone and the bones surrounding it, just to show you how I do the weight painting here. It's just this section here and nothing else. So maybe this one here as well. Okay, And then I want to remove weights from everywhere else. There we go. So I'm going to make the brush a bit bigger with F. Okay. Okay. And that is it. So that's what we've got there. So now we can actually start adding in influence from other bones here. So what I want to do here is make sure that these are 0.5 here. Same with this one here, 0.5. And then we can start adding in these increment values. So from 0.5 here, should we just paint these as well? It should be mirroring across, but it's not doing so at the minute. There we go. This is quite annoying. If it's just not mirroring properly, then you have to just either do it by hand or delete half your mesh and mirror it across again, and make sure the UVs are perfectly symmetrical so that you can fix the UVs after doing that. Okay. Okay, so now we can add these in here. So we're going to go 0.25, and then we'll leave it at that, I think. So 0.25 here. And that's mirroring fine, isn't it? Yeah, we want to make sure that this is mirroring properly. There we go. So there we go, and then we want to make sure now that this bone also has some influence in here, so we can start this one. There we go. Just decreasing the brush size to get in this tight part here. Like that. And then we can maybe sort of blur this inside bit here. Alright, and then it's going to look pretty ugly at the moment, but we're just manually painting in the weights on this here. So you can see that looks quite ugly there, but we're going to fix that. And we can remove the weights everywhere else. Alright. See here, yeah. So that's just gone far enough down there, so we can just. Okay, so now we're going to paint this 0.5 here. Like that. can do that one as well maybe. And then we can start painting in influence along here. So again, we want to go so maybe 2.5 here. So you can use like exact numbers here to make sure it's perfectly distributed along the edge loops. And now if we don't know if yes, we won't be able to see these in here because they're not global controls, they are rig armature specific controls. If we go to this one here and then back into weight paint, we actually have the controls to be able to test this deformation. Just going to turn off snapping, and you can see that we've got in a nice curve on the lip here, and all this looks horrible because we haven't graded this in yet. Okay, but we've got this nice curve which is what we want on the lip. Alright. And now we can sort of come in and grade these down here like this. So you want to maybe get this bone here. You can add in, say, a 1 down here. It's not mirroring, probably because there's some differences in the symmetry, which is probably caused by the multi-resolution modifier which I have on this mesh. But you can find that doing it this way takes a little bit longer, but actually saves time in the long run, because you know exactly what weights are where and what's influencing what. Okay, and this one as well. Here we go, like that. And then here we can do the same here. We can just paint this one here up to about here. Removing all the other weights and just having those on there. Same on here for now, and then we paint it out again with the other bone. Okay, so for example, let's say this bone here, we'll paint all this one for now. Like that, and then we can paint this one and start grading it in. So we can do a 0.5 here, just where the bones cross over, like that, and then maybe a 0.25 here, and so it's nice and graded, you see. And so using exact numbers to get a nice grading, and you know exactly which bones are affecting these vertices now. So here we can, you don't need to do this for every single bone, it's just the areas which are complicated. So around the mouth, and then we can smooth that out there. And so now you're getting nice smooth weights, you know exactly which is affecting which, and you can see that's looking quite nice there. So now we can paint in, say, 0.25 here as well. And so if we were to move this now, you can see that this chin is nice and it's moving nice and softly there, like that. Okay, and we can probably use the blur brush for the rest of it and just blur it in. Okay, and same on the other side, making sure it's symmetrical before we move on. There we go. And then maybe a bit here as well, just to make sure the deformation is nice and soft. Same with the other one. Yeah, we can just blur that in. Like that. Okay, so the blur brush is also very useful, and that just helps us get a bit more of a gradient. And so we can also maybe blur this in here as well, and blur this up here like this, and then we can get these, start blurring it into the chin there. Ah yes, we didn't paint this 0.25, so we're going to just do that now. There we go. That's it. That's it. There we go. This one here can be blended in here. And that's it. You're just painting it until you get a nice deformation. This takes a little bit of practice to get used to, but once you get the knack of it, you just get on with it, and it doesn't take so long. Okay, great. And obviously it's not being symmetrical, it's not behaving, so we've got to go in and just make sure it's all symmetrical like that. I'll fix that later. Okay, but you know, you get the idea. So for these difficult areas, you can use the paint palettes tool, and that will help you achieve some nice weights where the parts of this parts of the face or parts of the mesh are difficult to get exactly right. Okay, and so for this chin here, the blurring's worked fine, but for the lips it wouldn't work because it's a very complicated area. It needs precise measurements, and later, if it's because we've got the weights fixed and set, if we need any adjustments, we can just go back with the blur tool and just tweak away at it. But there's not as much work involved in getting something nice because we've already spent time removing all of the other weights and just keeping the weights we need in there at the right values. So that's how I approach the weight painting. So just to recap, you've got the paint palettes tool, you've got the tool settings that I use for the brush, and you've got the viewport settings here set to flat and single. I also have the wireframe turned on so I can see the geometry and target the vertices easily. And then I change my weights under editing and under weight paint and using custom colours. And I think that should be it for now. Hope that helps, and I'll catch you again some other time maybe. Bye bye for now.